Buenas tardes, amigos. How you doing, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Put It to Conversations. This is a very special series we're working on. This is, well, first of all, my name is Daniel G. Garza, and I am one of the Positively Fearless ambassadors. Positively Fearless is a campaign that's redefining what it means to live with HIV and showing others what is possible when you live positively fearless. In this case today, we are doing a show about cancer. So we are going to be talking information. I'm going to be sharing my story, and through the story, we'll have a special guest who will be sharing, breaking down my story, breaking down the things that happened during my anal cancer diagnosis, treatment, and recuperation. So without further ado, I'm going to bring up to stage Mr. José Carreras Rivera. Señor, ¿cómo estamos? Buenas tardes.
Buenas tardes, Daniel. Nice to be with you, and thank you for having me.
Gracias a ti. Thank you for coming back. For those of you who watched last week's episode with HIV, José Carreras Rivera was our guest, and he helped me break it down. Para la gente que no vio, for the people that weren't here last week, José, can you break down who you are for us a little bit? I'm sorry, I got cut up there.
Yes. So I'm a physician. I used to work for almost 10 years in the HIV with the HIV community, taking care as a primary care physician and specialist to HIV patients. Also, I did some research. Regarding our topic today, I have been working very close with the American Cancer Society chapter of Puerto Rico. I have been a volunteer for more than 10 years, and I happen to be a part of the board of directors of the American Cancer Society here in Puerto Rico. And I think the most important part of me related to this is that I'm a cancer survivor. I'm on my 5th year in remission. So this is a very nice topic to my heart, very near to my heart.
That's cool. And for those of you that know my story a little bit, know that this is my 6th year as a cancer survivor. And so not only are we going to be able to talk about what happens with cancer, but also kind of break down what happens with us. So like right in, like we know what we've been through. We know what we're talking about when it comes to cancer. Again, for those of you watching, I was diagnosed with anal cancer on May 15, on my 5th, Cinco de Mayo of 2015. And my joke is usually I'm so Mexican that I was diagnosed on Cinco de Mayo. So we're going to start the story the same way we started last week. And first of all, and before I even start, I want to make sure I want to thank all of the folks, the J&J Hispanic Employees Resource Group, HOLA, for making this possible today. And we appreciate all your help. Remember, we have 2 more episodes coming up next week and the following, so make sure you join us. Estela, thank you for joining us. We're glad that you're here. I want to remind you also that this is a conversation, so we want you folks to ask questions, comment, and be part of the show. So if you have any questions or comments for the doctor and me, I'm going to make sure I want to show you before we continue. Just I know you started in the video, but I want to make sure that we remember this. That as a reminder, we ask you that please refrain from discussing or asking questions regarding personal medical history or specific treatments. If you have treatment-related questions, we encourage you to speak with your healthcare provider. What may work for some people may not be the right option for others. And but other than that, ask away anything. Pues vamos a empezar un poquito. Let me tell you about my case, and then Jose will be breaking some of the stuff down for us. So I was diagnosed with anal cancer, and according to my diagnosis, it was a perfect storm between HIV, HPV, and polyps or anal tears. Is that common for anal cancer? Is that the only way, or there's other ways that can happen?
Yeah. So when we talk about anal cancer, and there are other types of cancer that are really related to HPV, human papillomavirus. So when we talk about anal cancer specifically, approximately 90% of anal cancer is HPV related. So you have been infected to developing cancer with HPV, and then you develop cancer as a consequence of having that infection.
Gotcha. So by the time that I was diagnosed, I was at a stage 2 in my diagnosis. So one of the cool things, and I'm going to say this about doctors because I always like to share this story when I talk about my doctor. First of all, Dr. Bobby Rad at Hoag Hospital here in Newport Beach, California. Sir, if you ever get to watch this, love you, man. He definitely saved my life. Now, one of the cool things about my doctor when I was diagnosed is that I like to tell the story. When we went in for the diagnosis, of course, I was trying to be really strong and not cry, but como quiera, one little tear was tight. And he got up and put his hand on my shoulder and said, "Look at me." And I was kind of like, it's like, "Look at me." And I was like, "I'm fine, I'm fine." And he was like, "Look at me." And when I looked up at his eyes, he was like, "We got this." And I think that was one of the first things that really made me feel comfortable. Like, first of all, I trusted him. Second of all, I knew that I wasn't on this journey completely alone. Although, tú sabes, no, it is a self journey because nobody can do treatment with you. Pero to know that there are people that support you and will be there along the road. Now, for me, the treatment was chemo and radiation. Surgery was not needed for me. But how do we know, Jose? How do we know what's the right treatment to choose? I know we're not talking specific treatments for anybody, pero is there a certain criteria? Is there a certain way to decide qué es lo mejor, surgery or chemo or radiation or todo junto?
Yes. So there are a lot of things that we have to take into consideration. We have to take into consideration the patient's overall health. We have to take into consideration the type of cancer, whether the cancer is localized or spread around the body. That also makes a difference. So we have to take into consideration many things. Sometimes surgery and chemo, that will be enough. Sometimes we need to do first chemo and radio and potentially surgery after. So that will depend case by case and depends on the specific of the patient's cancer.
Oh yeah, and this is again, before we move on too far down, I had it in my questions and I want to make sure that we answer, because today we're kind of focusing on anal cancer because that was what I was diagnosed with. And of course we want to bring in other cancers and be open to discussions about other cancers. Yes, Dr. Rad, he was totally rad, totally. Here's another. He treated us both with respect and beautiful acceptance. Yes, that really made a big difference. And I'm going to bring that up in a little bit, what a difference it made to have somebody who treated me and my partner with such respect. Pero para la gente que no sabe, for people who don't know, and we're going to kind of generalize a little bit, is there a general formula? Is there a specific way that cancers are formed? O cada cáncer es diferente. Every cancer is different.
So we have to understand that cancer is an overgrowth of a specific tissue. It could be bone, it could be muscle, it could be any part of our body. So there are some risk factors, and that's important to know, that will put us in risk of developing cancer. So it could be age, it could be history. So there are some genetics around this. You might have some genes that increase your probability of developing one type of cancer, but there are some other factors that we are modifiable, like smoking, obesity, tobacco, alcohol, and those are some exposures that might increase the risk of cancer. So it's important to know that not because you have one of those risks means that you're going to develop cancer, but there is more probability for you to develop cancer if you have one or more of those risk factors for one specific cancer.
Gotcha, because we hear a lot about people who have smoked all their lives and never develop any lung problems. Y luego gente, the other side, just people who have never smoked in their life, and we discover that they have lung cancer. So diets, lifestyles, geography, does that make a difference on the risk of cancers?
Definitely. Exercise, having a strong immune system, exposure to radiation. And when we say that, we usually think about X-rays, but exposure to sun also is a risk of developing cancer, skin cancer.
Sí, porque hay gente que anda en el sol todo el día, they're out in the sun all day, and they've never had an issue, and then a person it's out once, gets burned, and then all of a sudden, so genetics plays a lot into too. También who your parents and so mainly, I guess, to answer my question, there is no one A plus B equals C. C, no pun intended. There's no A plus B equals C formula for cancer. You just have to watch food, lifestyles, genetics. You really have to have an idea of who you are as a person, no?
Yeah, it's a cocktail, and we never know what's gonna make somebody to develop a cancer. I had patients who were healthy, they have a really nice lifestyle, and still they developed cancer. So there were some other factors that were stronger in that specific patient that make him to develop that cancer.
Yeah, and this is a very important that Estela's making. You have to share, she had to share with the OB/GYN, you have to share with your doctor your history, todo lo que eres. Make sure that you talk about everything so that your doctor can give you a proper diagnosis and checkup. And I want to make sure the C word is so scary. Sí, todavía, and even in the Hispanic population, Latinos, hablar de cáncer, no hables. Especially, for instance, a female with breast cancer, a male with colorectal or anal cancer. Son cosas que no se hablan, que no se pueden decir. But
yeah, I was going to say that when patients hear cancer, that they think that's equal death. It's a death sentence. So that's the first impression when we hear the word cancer. We're talking about, I'm dead, I'm going to die. So,
yeah. Y luego no hablar con otra gente, like so for instance, my parents, an uncle, somebody in my family was predisposed to cancers. Nunca dicen nada. They don't say anything. And the kids and the children, we all grow up like, oh no, there's no cancer history in the family. Like I really don't know if I was the first one diagnosed with cancer in my family or not. But I just kept saying, I don't know. I don't. Es que no quiero decir es que I don't know. But yeah, Christian was saying he treated us both with respect and beautiful sense. Because lifestyle, we talk about lifestyle, and in this case, I don't, for those of you watching, I'm not saying that being gay, bi, or somewhere in the spectrum is a lifestyle. But what comes with being a gay man, anal sex, that does have an impact in whether the cancers develops or not, correct?
Yeah, so specific to anal cancer, we know that having anal sex increase the possibility of getting infected with HPV. So, and that, as we said before, increases the possibility of developing anal cancer. So there are some things that we do and that we decide to do in our lives that can certainly carry some risk around this. Yeah.
And we're not saying that doing those things is bad. So don't walk away going, no, I can never have sex again. No, lo que estamos diciendo. Simplemente, if you are having, like, for instance, I had to be really honest with my doctor about, at one point in my life, I had sex and there were some tears that developed that got infected when I was younger that I forgot about as I got older. You just treated them and but once we had one-on-one conversations, I was able to share that with them. And so here's another question for us. Does being HIV positive predispose one to having various or specific cancers?
So that's a real nice question. So HIV is one of those risks that increases the possibility of developing cancer. So just we have to think about our immune system as someone that is protecting us all the time. So we are, as we speak, potentially developing cancer cells, but our immune system has the capacity to work with them. Usually, there are two examples that I will use. If I have a patient with HIV infection and they have been diagnosed with AIDS, that means that their immune system have fallen very low. There is an increased risk of developing cancer. As you get age, there is an increase of developing cancer because your immune system tends to get slower. So it's more or less the same logistic around why. there could be a possibility.
So bringing it back a little bit from like HIV that we talked about in the last episode, to me, being HIV positive, my immune system's already kind of is at risk, and then you add the cancer to it, so it's so basically what my doctor at one point said, that the HIV, the HPV, and all of the tears and the polyps were just like the perfect storm, pero también having an immune system that's not as strong as somebody who's HIV negative can cause a lot of issues. So again, if you're HIV positive, just keep an eye on that for yourself, and that's what we do. Before we continue, we're at the 15-minute mark, and I want to remind everybody our announcement. Just remember, we're not discussing personal treatments for you, but we suggest that you go to your doctor. But anything else, feel free to ask us, and we will answer. As you can see, we have a really good conversation here. We have another question for us, doctor. What causes cancer cells to either be malignant or benign? Ooh, good question. I guess what I mean, since they are both an overgrown of cells, what causes the difference?
So thank you for asking this. So when we talk about cancer, we're talking about overgrowth. So we have the difference between benign and malignant. When we talk about benign, it's just an overgrowth that will not have much of an impact. When we talk about malignant, that means that this is the cancer that could have a potential impact in our health. And other than that, it could also spread out on the body, So that's basically the difference when we say that it's benign or malignant. But usually the word cancer comes with a malignant connotation.
Gotcha. Sí, porque la gente, and this is a really good segue. When I first got my positive pap smears and got biopsies and cone biopsies, and I want to know what that is in a minute. I didn't want to share with my mom because my grandmother died of cancer, so I didn't want to scare her. Y ahí es donde empieza, no hablamos. Pero es que sí, o sea, we hear, okay, so from the patient, and I know you're a patient too, but from a patient perspective, we hear the word cancer, you see, oh, Dios mío, la novela, we start dramatizing everything that's going to happen. As a doctor, I've always wanted to ask this, as a doctor, how does it impact you, or how do you prepare to give somebody a diagnosis like that?
It's never easy. It's never easy because you know the impact that it's going to have into the patient. You hope to have all the tools to make that person feel comfortable and to try your best to make them feel that everything's going to be all right. You felt that way with your doctor. I think that's the best we can do.
And for those of you healthcare professionals that are watching, let me tell you, that one hand on my shoulder and that look in the eye completely changed the way I saw cancer. It completely changed the way I saw treatment. It made me a little more courageous in knowing that I had the support. Not that they were just going to throw me into chemo and radiation. I had to solo, a ver cómo te las arreglas. Like it was like that we're going to help you through it. So that really did make a difference. It says here, so there is an increased risk for those with compromised immune systems, I guess, when it comes to cancer. So there is, right?
Yes.
We have another question for you. What type of preventive exams should one have to catch anything that could become cancer? And there's two questions. We're going to ask that one first. Is there anything we can do other than a colonoscopy?
Yeah, so it is important that when you talk with your doctor, based on your age, gender, and other risk factors, he should be sending you some screening, like blood and stools, like pap smear, like one of our audience mentioned, like breast exam, mammogram, prostate cancer. It is really important. That's a big issue, especially in us as Latino. So we are very macho, and we don't want to, like go to the urologist and have a rectal finger exam. That's not gonna happen. So potentially, I remember that many people say, I get the blood test. Yeah, but when that comes positive, potentially you have had it for a long time. So it
Oh,
is
wow.
important to talk to your doctor, that he understands what risks are you having because of age, gender, and lifestyles, and he will send a lot of there are a lot of tests that can be done.
Gotcha. Here's another question for you, Jose. Oh, well, let me ask the second part. How could we ensure that underserved communities have access or know to get these tests?
Interesting. That's a hard one. So I think that one of the things is that we have to make sure that we have this type of forum to educate people, to educate our communities, especially the Hispanic and Latino communities. They usually don't want to talk. They don't want to go to the physician. They don't want to look for things because they will find. I remember to have heard that, yo no busco porque encuentro. So that's something that we prefer to avoid. I'm having some symptoms, but I'm not going to look into that. I can't handle them. So it is really important that we go to our doctors, that you talk to your doctor to make sure that you're having the screenings that you need.
Yeah. Bien dice este comentario, o sea, having these discussions are important. Yes, and that's why we're talking. We're literally, or I'm literally putting my butt on the line to make sure that we have these questions. See what I did there? Yes, I definitely felt in control and was aware, and my provider was very supportive. I didn't want to scare my mom. Sí, pero mientras más hablamos, yo creo que mientras más hablamos, the more we talk, the less fearful we are of the conversation. Here's another question for you, Doc. No, Jose, sorry, we corrected that. How did you, Jose, as a doctor, handle your own diagnosis? Since you have in a physician's perspective, were you as scared because you know what can happen, or were you like, I know the info, so I'm prepared? Were you prepared? Did you feel prepared?
So I don't think that because I am a doctor, I was prepared to have a cancer diagnosis. I never thought that could happen to me. Having said that, I think I felt comfortable that what were the steps that I needed to do. So what I needed to do to make sure that my cancer was taken care of. The hardest part, though, was telling my wife. Telling those people that care for you, those people that love you, because you know that the way they're gonna feel, you don't want to hurt them. You don't want them to feel sorry. You don't want them to feel sad. So that, I think, from my part, that was the hardest. Yeah.
That is a very common thing among a lot of cancer conquerors, that I like to call them. Is not so much me. Like, for instance, I've been through a lot of health issues, so I knew that I was capable to handle whatever the news was, and I knew that. Otra vez, cosa de Latinos. Dios sabe, si salgo de esta, salgo de esta. Like, if everything's supposed to be good, things will be good. God's on my side, but I was more concerned about how people around me would react and how they would treat me, or how they would handle it. Like, for instance, I didn't want to be pitied. I didn't want anybody to feel sorry for me. So it was, but I lost so much weight and got so sick during treatment that it was hard to not tell somebody, not tell people. Y aparte que soy bien hablador. Let's just be honest. I'm social media. True story is, we were on our way back home from the doctor's office, and I was texting my sisters, and as Christian was driving, my partner, and I was like, hey, I need to call you. Can you talk? Hey, I need to call you. Can you talk? And I didn't even look at him, and I'm like, I think I'm going to no, I didn't say I didn't even think. I said, I'm going to make a video when I get home. Y él manejando, he was driving, and he was like, of course you are. Like, I was like, yes, because that's what I need to do. I need to share my information. But I think I did it as a way to take control. Estela just said, take control of the situation. Like, I was not going to be a victim of cancer. I was going to fight it. I was going to respect that cancer was part of my life now, but I was going to come out ahead. Do most people that you treat or talk to, I guess I'm trying to say, like, in the Latino community, like, are most people fighters, or, you know what I mean? Or most people just like, se acabó?
Yeah. So the first impression is that they will probably, cuelgan los guantes, they don't want to deal with it. They usually are more scared about the treatment process than from the cancer per se. So but it's something that you have to talk to them, let them know what's going on, what's going to happen, and usually at the end, they get strong and they will fight.
Yeah, bien dice aquí la pregunta. Great question, great points. As long as we know the steps to take and take charge of what is needed, it's easier. But we always want to ease our loved ones' pain. See, we're the ones with the cancers, but ay, pobrecito, no llores. No, don't cry. It's going to be okay. And then we're like, wait a minute, I'm the one with cancer. ¿Qué pasó aquí? What's going on?
You were the one supporting the other person now.
To add a little more to the story before we hit the halfway mark, so just for everybody, I started treatment, and here's how. So I was diagnosed on 5 de Mayo. My last day of chemo was 4th of July. And so I did the whole summer of 2015. And now I tell people, yeah, on 4th of July, we throw a big celebration for me with fireworks and music and food. So it's all for me, people. That's how egotistical I am. But I also had a lot of complications with radiation. We had fistulas that appeared. There was a lot of issues. Can you, in your simplest scientific forms, tell us what a fistula is and how it's caused?
Yeah, so a fistula is it's like a hole that connects two cavities within the body. It could go from inside the body to outside the body, or it could connect two cavities within the body. Let's say the bladder with the rectum, and there should not be that there.
That
There are
hole?
some, yeah, that hole. There are some other. There is another concept of fistula in the Latino population, which is more like a tear that we get because of tissue that is damaged or is not as strong as it should be. So.
Gotcha. So just for everybody watching, so I'm gonna give a quick cartoon explanation. So this is my butt. Where's the camera? There's my camera. There's my butt, and this is the anal cavity, obviously. But here on the side, there was another hole that went all the way through, and then there was another hole that went sideways. So basically, I had two anal cavities. So whenever I had to use the bathroom or I had discharge, it came out of two places, which it's not supposed to, right? And then the one that was through the meat basically would get God bless, it did not get infected. I have to praise my partner Christian, who was a big, huge part of helping me stay clean and stay keep everything nice so that it didn't get infected. But I had to wear diapers for a long time, and then that's what caused one of my arteries to tear, because the opening was right in front of an artery, so that burst and it just bled out. So this is when I had to go to the emergency room, and they had to revive me because I died. But so there, just so you know, there's a lot of complications that can happen. We're not stopping you. Please follow your doctor's directions, whether you need radiation or not. This is not what I'm saying. I'm just telling you my story. But we found, and maybe you can explain to us a little bit about this. We found that there was a lot of things that, how can I explain this? Like I know that sometimes we want to go for best case scenario. Best case scenario, esto es lo que va a pasar. No te preocupes, we're going for this. But I always feel like as a patient, especially after many years of health issues, I want to hear worst case scenario. Dime qué es lo peor que puede pasar. Just give me the worst so that I at least can be prepared for anything in between. I'm going to be okay and something can happen. Does that make sense? Like, is that, or am I really weird and I'm the only one that thinks that way?
No. I think that the way to go, and I used to do that with my patients, is to let them know this is the best scenario, this is the worst one. Everything in between, you don't need to know. Once you know the best scenario and the worst one, you're ready for everything. So you're not weird. That's the way that we should make sure our patients are aware, because the treatment process is really hard, and just for us to understand that there are not many treatments that are specific for a cancer cell. Technology and science is growing, and we now have some technology that might get us there. But most of the chemo and radiation that we get as a treatment, cancer treatment, not only affects the sick cells, it also affects healthy cells.
Gotcha.
So most of the side effects are because of that.
Gotcha. I think that kind of answers the question here. Is like, why is there such a need to know approach with oncology? And I think it's because of that. As we start treatment, we don't know where it's going to go. We don't know if it's going to tackle the right cells, or like in my case, it started doing some damage in other parts of my body, and we took a little break. But I mean, I know now that there was no way to tell me or prepare me for the worst case scenario, because we really didn't know. It's like throwing a dart. You really don't know where it's going to land. You know where it's starting, and you kind of have an idea of it's supposed to land on the dartboard. Pero lo que va a pasar en el camino, whatever's supposed to happen, is really like up in the air, I guess, sometimes.
Yeah.
Which brings to the next question for you. What makes a doctor an oncologist? Does it take an extra number of years to be a specialist, or is it focused during your residency?
So once they finish their med school, they do a residency on internal medicine, and after they complete those 4 years, they do a fellowship on oncology. So it's an additional, it's a subspecialty, really.
Gotcha. And I want to come back and acknowledge, thank you, Roberto Barnes, for joining us today. We appreciate it, all of it. I didn't think I mentioned it at the beginning, but we are on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Twitter. So any one of those channels that you're watching, feel free to comment and ask questions. And if you're watching this on replay, remember, you can still ask questions and make comments, and I'll make sure that Jose gets those if it's anything for him. We're at the halfway mark, and I want to make sure I remind everybody again that, as a reminder, we ask that you please refrain from discussing or asking questions regarding personal medical history or specific treatments. If you have treatment-related questions, we encourage you to speak with your healthcare provider. What may work for some may not be right options for others. And as you can learn here, that each of us has our own, we have our own journey that we went on. Eating was another thing. Oh my God, el asco de comer, the nausea. And luckily, we were giving me nausea shots every day, so that kind of helped. But for those of you, I know they give you, like for me, they kept telling me to drink protein drinks, which were horrible for my system. They did not like them. Lo que me abrió el apetito, the thing that opened my appetite, and again, I laugh and I say this as a joke because it's how Mexican I am. Tacos de frijoles and salsa, bean tacos with salsa is what actually got me eating again. And that's what it took. Now, this is something that I discussed with my nutritionist, because I had 2 nutritionists during my treatment and post-treatment, was that they kept trying to suggest all these foods that I eat, because I went down to 123 pounds. Right now, for those of you watching, I'm 165. I'm not ashamed to say it anymore. I'm 165, but when I was really sick, I was 123. And they kept trying to get me to gain weight. And they would suggest all these foods and protein shakes, but I would just throw them up. I couldn't keep them. And I finally told them, look, I had bean tacos over the weekend. And one of the girls who was Caucasian and didn't quite understand the culture was like, no, that's so bad for you, tortillas. And I'm like, look, I'm eating. We need to celebrate the fact that I'm eating. So we've already talked kind of a little bit about the Hispanic mentality of cancer, but does the cancers know this is a Hispanic body, this is the Black body, this is the Caucasian body? ¿Sí hay diferencia? Is there a difference?
There could be some difference in the incidence of some type of cancer when we compare, for example, the U.S. population versus the Hispanic population in the U.S. There could be some difference. Basically, what makes those difference is genetics and lifestyles. So we might have some cultural things that we do eat that might predispose us to have some type of cancers that other ethnicities do not.
Now, this might sound as a silly question, and correct me if I'm wrong, but por decir, if I lived in Mexico most of my life, and certain geography, I was used to a certain diet, certain lifestyle, and then I migrate to the States where it's a different everything from the work to the nutrition to the life. can a cancer be dormant in one area, and then if you move geography, can it wake up? I mean, I know it sounds very sci-fi, pero es posible?
So just remember that when we if I live all my life in Mexico and now I live in northern US, my habits might change a lot. So that will definitely have an impact on my cancer risk. So it's not that the geography per se make the cancer wake up, like you say, but it's more the things that moving to that place and doing things potentially the way they are done there. Like in US, we eat a lot of fast food, whether potentially in your hometown you were more like fresh food, that could have an impact on the risk of some cancers. If you have some genetic predisposition for a type of cancer and now you're eating junk food, that might have awakened the cancer, as you said, sort of saying. Yeah.
Si no es que está dormido el cáncer, the cancer is just there waiting, like, have another hamburger, I'm coming out. Like, it doesn't quite work that way, but it is something to think about, because I know, I mean, there's just some people that I know grew up in Mexico, and they were in a farm, in a rancho, where they killed fresh meat, and everything was, they grew their own vegetables, todo está fresco, everything's fresh. And then they moved to the States, and they start eating fast food or processed foods, and they start developing sicknesses. And a lot of people say, es que me fui para Estados Unidos y me enfermé. I went to the United States and got sick. It's not necessarily that. It's just that you start changing the way factories
lifestyle.
Yeah.
Lifestyle changes.
We have another comment here. I had a colonoscopy, and one precancerous polyp was found. It was tested, and it was benign. Is this something I should be worried about, or just be grateful to have it had removed? Will they come back? Will polyps come back?
Yeah, polyps can come back. I think that the thing that we have to do is just go and do our checkup. So that's where we want to find those potentially malignant lesions, because sometimes we find them as benign lesions, but they could transform. There is some of them could transform to a malignant lesion and change into cancer. So
gotcha. Now we hear a lot too también, por decir, when I was diagnosed, I was 44. I was about to turn 45 that year. And the number for when a man should get colonoscopies, is it 40, 45, todavía 50? Like, what is the right time for a man to get a colonoscopy?
So based on the American Cancer Society, if there is no other risk, it's between 45 and 50. But today, if there are some other risks, and that's why, as we talked in the beginning of the conversation, it is important to know your family history around cancer, because if you had a near family member that had colon cancer, that means that potentially your gastroenterologist will perform that colonoscopy earlier, or will start doing some tests earlier than if you did not have that history.
Gotcha. Y es parejo? Is it even men and women, or is
yes.
one sex more prone than the other?
No. So regarding colon cancer, is basically the same. They are the second most common cancer within the Hispanic population, whether we look at the female or male population separately.
Gotcha. Yeah, because most of the times that we hear news or advertisements or announcements for cancer, it's usually directed to men. I mean, colorectal cancers, pero las mujeres también. Everybody should get tested equally, right? We have another comment here. Oh no, where's that one? I've heard this myth many times, that cancer feeds off sugars like sodas, pastas, rice, etc. Is this true, or is it just a myth? Good point, because we're talking about myths and facts today.
So there's a lot of controversies on this topic. One of the things that we always tell patients that were diagnosed with cancer is that they have to try to eat healthier. That doesn't mean that you have to cut on all sugars, that you cannot enjoy un pedacito de pan, a little bit of bread, or, that's not the point. The point is you have to change and make sure that you're eating healthier than you used to.
Gotcha. Así que, para que lo sepan, no tienen que dejar el panecito con el café. You don't have to leave your little pan, porque yo soy panecito con café, me encanta. But just watch, and that's one thing that I have to do. But I think it's mostly too because I turned 50, I'm older, I do have health issues that I have to work on, so it's just a combination now. Now, for those of you, before we move on to the next segment, I am cancer-free right now. I just got my 6-year checkup, which came back clear. There was some issues, but that were not related to cancer. So my body is clear. My mind is clear, which when they did my head check, I was like, go back. I know there has to be something wrong with me, but you don't get no, que así estaba yo ya de loco. That's just my normal now. But there is, I think, something that in the community we talk about is chemo brain. And I am a big believer of chemo brain, that during the times that I was going to treatment, my mind was not in the right place. Es cierto that this chemo brain exists, and I've heard 10 years. Is that true or myths? That's about how long it takes to clear.
So there is a lot of information around there talking about how long does the chemo effect stays in our body. So there's not a specific time frame that we can say, but there is in fact some effects that will take longer to just fade away. And like we said, chemo is not specific to cancer cells. It also affects normal tissues that are multiplying like cancer cells are doing. So there are some effects that will stick with you for a longer period beyond treatment. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, because we talked about it a little bit last week on the first episode about people with AIDS, that we do have that that lingers in our brain. Y luego aparte, I have chemo brain. Por eso, I don't know how it functions sometimes, people. I really don't. But this is something that over the years I have acknowledged that there are, like, if I work constantly all day, at the end of the day, I do feel like there's a part of me that just doesn't, like, there's a connector that's not connected anymore. And I have to take a break and step back. But I've talked to other cancer survivors, and we have the same story. And some people chuck it up as, es que ya estás viejo, you're getting old. But I do believe that there is some residue left behind. So just for those of you, if you're going through that, know that I go through that too. So this brings me, before I go into that, are there treatments, vitamins, etc., that can help support our immune systems after the age of 50 so it does not decline as much and give cancer a chance to develop? And treatments, vitamins, ¿qué podemos hacer?
So the first thing I have to say is always talk to your doctor about anything that you're trying or willing to take. Of course, vitamins are good to take, especially if you don't have the best eating habits. Make sure that you get what you need, at least on a vitamin. But the best way to go is to make sure that you are eating as healthier as possible.
Gotcha.
Doing exercise, sleeping well, that's other stuff that is important.
Yeah, and hay ciertas cosas que I'm not good at. I'm not good at exercising, and I definitely don't sleep well most of the time. So I'm totally putting myself on the hot seat today. One thing that we haven't talked about, Jose, is mental health. How we talked a little bit about mental chemo brain, but how does that affect? How does the diagnosis affect? Like, for instance, for me, it definitely it had the potential to do two things. One was to completely victimize me and break me down, which for anybody who knows me, that is not my style. I took the other route, which was let's get empowered, let's get information, let's talk about it, especially anal cancer in the gay and Hispanic community. Vamos a hablar de cáncer anal. But depression, anxiety, can that be affected by cancers?
Definitely. I think that one of the things that we talk, just hearing the word cancer related to a diagnosis that we are being given, um, brings some stress into our lives. Uh, it is really important to have a supporting group, supporting team, because it is really easy for a cancer patient to develop anxiety, to develop depression. And this is not only for the cancer patient. So I always talk about cancer as a family diagnosis, because potentially you as a cancer patient are managing everything very well, but your partner may not. He might be the one that is getting the anxiety. He might be the one getting depressed. So it is really important that from a healthcare, from a mental health perspective, that we not only look at the patient, but at their family and supporting group.
Yeah, I tell people now is the moment you are diagnosed, start seeking a support group, go to therapy, um, find, go and have good conversations with your caregiver, whoever that person's going to be, because if I waited a little bit longer than when I was diagnosed, and I would have liked to have started sooner so I could start processing what was going on with me and my body and my brain. Um, the other thing that people don't talk about is when your partner becomes your caregiver, because me and Christian were together for 2 years, just 2.5 years when I was diagnosed, and he became my caregiver. And so he went from partner to caregiver. And then once I was ready to go back in the world by myself, I transitioned. I was ready to go and do things by myself now. But I kind of left it behind as a caregiver. And because we weren't prepared mentally for that, we both could have used a therapist to help you through that. Does that make sense? And do you see that often?
Yes, yes. So caregivers are in a different dimension than patients. So once the patients usually are okay, I'm done with this, I'm okay, I'm just gonna go and continue with my life. Caregivers are still thinking, what's gonna happen? You cannot do this, you cannot do that, because you're gonna get worse, you're gonna go back. So there are some um, miedos
Sí, los
around
miedos.
that. Yeah, there are some miedos that the caregiver will have more for longer time that us as patients.
Yeah. So for those of you, again, seek your own treatment, ask your doctors. But this is my personal opinion, the moment that you are diagnosed, you and your caregiver should start seeking support groups and help and talk to people, ask questions. Um, like us, it might sound like a dumb question, but somebody's gone through it. If it popped in your head, si tú estás pensando, somebody else thought about it too, and we might just have the answer for you. Because it did take us a little while to get out of the caregiver patient mode and go back to being partners, which was really interesting. So we've gotten to the point, doctor. Es que yo te quiero decir doctor, ¿para qué más que decir? Yo te quiero decir doctor. As in the last episode, this is the point where we share some words of wisdom with the audience. So what words of wisdom do you have to share today?
So my word of wisdom is make sure you do your checkups. Talk to your physician. Ask them for what cancer screenings you need to take based on your risk, age, gender, lifestyle, to make sure that we identify potential cancer very early. The earlier that we identify and diagnose, the best results will, more positive results chance there are. And other thing that I want to add is that I never talk about patients who have died of cancer. So in Spanish we say perdió la batalla contra el cáncer. He lost his fight against cancer. No patient lost his fight against cancer. So there are some of us that are lucky enough to have survived cancer, and cancer is no longer within us. But those that are no longer within us just won the fight with their last breath. because cancer did not survive. So they are also winners. They also are warriors. Just that the way they beat cancer was different.
We how dare you? There are definitely, in the last 6 years since I was diagnosed, some people that I got to meet at treatments or in support groups that are not here with us today, and it's for them that we do this. It's for them that we continue to do this. It's make sure that, not that they didn't have the information and not believe, pero porque queremos hablar, que como gente latina hay que comunicarnos, hay que hablar, hay que perder el miedo al cáncer. Comuníquense, hablen. Make sure you get the information that you need. I'm going to give these two. Make sure you can go over to cancer.gov, and it'll take you to all and every information that you need. Remember, if you can't find it, ask somebody. Some of us will have it. Also to the cdc.gov/cancer will have information for you. Or you can reach out to us and we will definitely give you the information that you need. We had a couple more comments before we go. Wow, you guys have been giving us such great information. Thank you. No, thank you for watching. Thank you, everybody who's been watching us on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Twitter. If nobody was watching, it would just be us two talking to each other. This is Christian, my partner. It was difficult to change gears, and without support, it was very tough. There are resources out there now which did not exist a few years ago. There's also a level of PTSD for caregivers. Yeah, PTSD, no hemos hablado. We haven't even touched PTSD when it comes to caregivers and patients. Porque a veces, as a patient, something is off and de volada, like, oh, it must be cancer again. Because to end the story before we run out of time, my complications with radiation and the problems that occur with the fistulas and other issues caused me to have an ostomy. So I have a colonoscopy, which I named him Tommy. And I had him now, in fact, talking about special days, I had him on April Fool's Day of 2016, April 1st of 2016, fue cuando nació Tommy. And that's another level. Like, it's a constant reminder that I had cancer. Even when I don't want to think about it, it still reminds me that I had cancer. And that's a level of PTSD que mucha gente no piensa. Does that make sense?
Yes. One other thing that we usually have in the back of our mind is whether this is gonna come again or not. So there is this sensation that this might again come up. So every time you go and do your checkup, you are like hoping for the best, but it's scared because you're saying, what if that comes again?
Yeah. Because I had read it. I mean, for those of you, please don't go down the rabbit hole and read every article out there, because you will never stop. Y el susto, estamos como decían, con el Jesús en la boca, esperando. But I had heard and I'd read that people with anal cancer usually don't develop the cancer anally again, but it can go to the chest or to the heart or the lungs. So I was having esophagus problems, and I knew, yo ya sabía que yo tenía cáncer. Era cáncer. Now I'm just waiting to go get checked for them to tell me. And I'm like, dime cuándo, ya me voy a ir, ya se acabó el mundo. But then I found out it was just esophagus problems, and I just needed an acid. So yes, it can trigger you. You're not alone in thinking this. Let's reassure you. But before you go down that rabbit hole, ya le estás rezando, go get checked. Go talk to your doctor. We have one last comment here. Nancy, saludos. Me da gusto que haga estos videos. Mis tías sufren de diferentes cánceres. Muchas cosas que debemos informarnos. Sí, claro, nos falta mucha información, Nancy. Por eso hay que platicar y hay que hablar. Great information. Thank you, Dan. Oh, thank you. Thank you for sharing your story, Jose, for sharing your insight and answering facts and myths. Es que si no hablamos, que no hable Dios no lo oye, bien dice la gente. We have 3 more minutes. ¿Algo que nos faltó, José? ¿Algo más que podemos decir?
Well, I think that the most important thing that we can say is just to make sure that we do our checkups. That's the best prevention measure that we can do, is just go to the doctor and, like you said, let's talk, hablemos. let's speak up. Let's say that when you don't feel that something's right, just talk to your doctor. Insist. I always tell my breast cancer patients, usually they come with, I feel this in my breast, and I do a breast exam, and potentially I didn't feel anything weird or anything that is like, I will say that this is cancer, but they insisted. So I did some tests, I did some studies, and voila, there it is. So make sure to talk to your physician. Insist when you feel that there's something's not right. Just insist.
Yeah. And I want to remind everybody before we leave that we have a couple more episodes. If you missed last week's episode, make sure you go to any of our pages, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, or Twitter, and you can watch the replay. We had HIV last week, and next week, October 26th, we're going to have mental health secrets. Los secretos de la salud mental. And again, this is part of the Hispanic Latino Heritage Month in a partnership with the J&J Hispanic Employees Resource Group, HOLA, and Little Mexican Branches, Inc. So we want to welcome you and encourage you to come back and visit us. My guest for next week's show is going to be Dr. Ruby Castilla. So make sure that you come and join us for that show. Bring your questions, share the links. As soon as you see it pop up on your Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, or Twitter, share it on your page, share it with your friends, and bring them over. So we'll be talking a little more about mental health in the Hispanic Latino community. So traigan sus preguntas, vénganse a platicar, estén listos a hacer las preguntas que tal vez en otras ocasiones no quieran preguntar. Las vamos a contestar. Por lo pronto, Jose, thank you so much for being part of the last two episodes. I so appreciate your time.
No, gracias a ti, Daniel. This has been really a nice experience, and lovely to chat and talk to our Hispanic people in the U.S.
Y ya hicimos arreglos, ya hablamos Jose y yo. We're going to do one of these in all Spanish, so that toda la raza que no habla inglés venga y haga preguntas. So stay tuned for those. We'll be sure to bring that information to you. Again, I want to thank all of you for watching. Thank you for commenting. This is a show about conversation, so we want to make sure that you are part of the conversation. Thank you to the J&J Hispanic Employee Resource Group, HOLA, for all their support and putting this together. And Jose, thank you so much for being here. Por lo pronto, nos vemos la próxima semana. Gracias por acompañarnos. Thank you for joining us. I'm Daniel J. Garza. This is Putting Together Conversations, the special editions, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye. And where's my video?